Reginald Alfred Bush Jr., born March 2nd, 1985. Reggie Bush, to me, is still the most exciting player I've ever seen in college football of my generation. To other generations, that statement may seem out of bounds or far-fetched, but to the ones that were alive and interested in college sports or sports in general back in the early 2000s, know that that's 100% fact. Around that time, YouTube as a platform was just beginning its rise to household use, and Bush was its first superstar athlete on the college level. It's hard to, but I'll try to explain what it was like watching Reggie play live. The best way I could compare it as a basketball player was he was like Steph Curry. He was a first and he was an only. Also, most importantly, he did it while constantly game planned for game after game, year after year. The only player I can say that about that's not physically dominant, so game plans don't work against, is Curry. Steph was boxing one, doubled, tripled, and still wound up with 30, 40 points pretty much his entire life. Whenever you saw Curry play though, he always put on a show as an amateur, all while every TV screen was tuned into his games. Reggie was like this. Until him, I've never seen a running back with the speed, quickness, elusive ability, marketable, and a winner like Bush. Literally, if you felt you were late to the game and caught it in the third quarter, you could still count on him to have another breakout play just for you. It's like it happened every game and almost every time he touched the football. But unlike Steph Curry, who went on to greatness in his sport at the pro level, winning 2 league MVPs, 3 championships, became the sport's all-time greatest shooter, changed the Golden State Warriors and the entire sport of basketball, Reggie Bush became an afterthought that will probably fade away with time. A disappointment by many, and some even say he was a bust in the NFL. He's even had his greatest individual achievement taken away from him years later on a technicality that's since been fixed, yet he won't be getting his legacy for what I saw him do with my own eyes back. Reggie Bush should have been the best running back of all time. He was like Barry Sanders and Mike Vick all in one player, imagine that. Of course, if you say that today, it'll be met with many turned faces, but from 2003 to 2005, you couldn't tell me he wasn't put on earth to be that. Was he a bust? Well, not to me. He was decent. He played 11 seasons, averaged 4.3 yards per carry, and caught 477 passes and almost 8 yards per rush for his career. He was also a Super Bowl champion. But no, things didn't go particularly as expected, and here are 3 reasons why. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it. Reggie Bush was a 6-foot running back from San Diego, California, Spring Valley to be exact. When he was just 15 years old, he was playing with the varsity team, a future Heisman finalist and eventual first overall pick, Alex Smith, handing him and passing him the ball, then went on to college to play with another great quarterback for his level, Heisman winner Matt Leinart. Beyond that, Reggie was simply better than his competition, faster than everyone else, as Alex Smith once put it. He would be a viral high school star today in this era. Only YouTube hadn't been created yet to showcase the talent he possessed until later. In the state of California, he was all everything, including rated the #1 running back in the country, CIF champion, and state first-team offensive MVP. He chose USC and Pete Carroll, and the rest was viral. Stunt number 1, an introduction to the NFL. If you've heard me speak about the difference between the college basketball game and the NBA, that same applies to college football and the NFL. Of course, the difference in levels is assumed, but there's still little intricacies that play a role in determining if you will be successful or not as an individual. For Reggie Bush, this couldn't have hit him any harder. At USC, Bush was nothing short of spectacular. I could write an endless essay on how good he was. As I've already said, he was the most exciting player I've ever seen at that level with my own eyes. Not only could he run, but he could catch, play special teams, and even throw on occasion. By 2005, he doubled his production from his sophomore year, averaging 8.7 yards per carry, over 1,700 yards rushing, and 16 touchdowns from 6 the previous year. Like high school, Bush was all everything at USC by his time to leave, so just imagine everything a running back could do, he was. Even beating out Vince Young and teammate Matt Leinart for one of the most prestigious awards in all sports, the coveted Heisman. Leading up to the draft, with the Texans holding the first pick, everyone thought the large market in Texas would wind up with college football's most hyped and exciting talent of the YouTube era. Even the Saints at number 2 were already making arrangements. In his first introduction, he saw that things don't always go your way as a young player in the NFL, and the team you go to, it's up to you to make the best of. Bush's agent tried endlessly to convince Sean Payton not to draft Reggie, as he didn't want to go to the small New Orleans market. But the Saints weren't passing on the chance to draft the Zion Williamson of football of his time. The next day, they drafted Reggie, and I don't think he ever really settled into being there. His next introduction was to players that were actually just as talented as he was. Linebackers running just as fast and hitting even harder. Holes closing up sooner or never opening at all. This came as a shocker to Reggie, as in his life it never happened. It left him questioning himself, and to me, he lost confidence. Yet he was still the Offensive Rookie of the Year at 35 rushing yards per game, 565 total yards rushing, and 6 touchdowns. Much can be said about how he was used as well in New Orleans, as mainly a receiving back and second, third thought to Drew Brees' passing-centered offense. He didn't have a 1,000-yard rushing season in New Orleans for these reasons, along with him not figuring out how to adjust to not being the superstar he was in college any longer. Stunt number 2, expectations mattered. So just as Reggie Bush was the first real viral YouTube college football sensation, he was expected just as much to become the same player from college to the NFL. Imagine Steph Curry becoming Seth Curry for his career. Not a bad career and played a long time, but had Seth been a lottery pick and did what Steph did in college, he'd be considered a bust too. Reggie was thought to go as high as number 1 in the draft if it wasn't for the Texans drafting Mario Williams and him slipping to a team that just wasn't the right fit for him in any way other than he got a Super Bowl championship. But in those first 5 down years for Bush, I think his confidence was adjusted, we'll say. Along with everyone else realizing he just wasn't going to live up to the hype, and things became normal. Normal was never a word used to explain Reggie Bush, but that's what happened. When you're a star, teams are built around you. Offenses as well. Opportunities are given to you and room for error. After the league and Reggie himself realized at that level he was just normal, not the extraordinary talent he was prior, his expectations subsided and the spectacular became just normal. Stunt number 3, focused on the game. In sports, some players are true hoopers and some play as a means to an end, meaning when they accomplish whatever motivated them in the beginning, the drive to still excel changes and they settle. With Reggie Bush, I don't know if a lifestyle off the court was a good thing for his career. With one of the more outstanding stables in the game, means Reggie Bush was out there per se. Not meaning he wasn't focused to play on game days, because you hear many stories of athletes involved in promiscuous lifestyles off the field and still be great players. But with everything going on or not with Bush on the field, I don't think those outside relationships helped him. The way I look at it, if I'm not where I want to be in life, there's no way I can take on a responsibility like a faithful relationship. Not to say dating is off the board, but relationship after relationship can only be a distraction. When you're expected to change the league and things aren't going so well, that's the last thing needed. Some call Reggie Bush the soldier boy of the Kim Kardashian curse, the first. She has since moved on to her 4th most high-profile relationship, and so has Reggie. But I can only imagine what that world had to have been like while juggling a football career. His biggest successes came after being traded to Miami in 2011 and also with Detroit in 2013, rushing for over 1,000 yards for the first and second time in his 11-year career. In 2010, his Heisman was taken away from him for accepting money while in college, only for athletes in 2022 able to be paid off their likeness. But the NCAA has said they won't reinstate his achievement, leaving his biggest legacy chapter out of the book of Reggie Bush. All in all, Reggie Bush was not a bust. He played over 10 years, won a Super Bowl as a key piece, had a few 1,000-yard rushing seasons, and had it not been for freak injuries over his career, he could have been a lot better. But for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth.